Welcome to One on One. I'm Greg Bassey, your host from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. It's a big day here at PAC 14. We have the guy who's done more for this community than anyone I know in my entire life. I have to admit, I'm completely in the bag for this man. He's my hero. He's Colonel Bob Cook. Welcome, Colonel Cook.
Thank you, Greg. I'm glad to be here, and it's always a pleasure to be with you. As I just mentioned, I not only know you, but I knew and liked your mother very much.
Thank you, and you were always very nice to her. She was the secretary for some people in town, and she was always around you. And
Right,
it's
railroads.
Yes, and it's just great that you've kept up. So it's terrific. So, but anyway, thank you for being here. You're here because not only because you're 91, but because it's the 50th anniversary of the Greater Salisbury Committee, a group that you helped make. Tell me about that.
Well, yes, at the time, I had been at the University of Delaware for several years, coming up there from the University of Tennessee. I was at the University of Tennessee as a professor of military science, retired out of Korea, came back there, and then came to Delaware to help start the Division of Urban Affairs. And later I started another institution at Delaware, University of Delaware, called Technical and Business Services, which is very much like the operation there at Salisbury University. So I was also consulting for a major consulting firm in Washington, and at the time that I heard about this, I was actually in Colorado doing something called a payment in lieu of taxes and revenue sharing study for the Congress. Very interesting. Much of the United States is still owned by the federal government. We were doing the thing to find out how to make it profitable for the federal
Right.
fair. Yeah. So anyway, I heard, well, at the time I was also the president of the Northeastern Industrial Developers, a 12, 13 state group. And they went, and through A.L. Fleming, you may not remember that name, but he was the one-man business school at Salisbury State Teachers College then.
Right.
So he knew about me because I'd written a number of economic studies for Delaware at the governor's behest, and also for the Delmarva Peninsula. Anyway, long story short, a group of individuals here, and the first people that contacted me were the wonderful guy John W.T. Jack Webb,
Right.
and a distinguished attorney, and
Great lawyer.
Great lawyer, and Lou Hass, who had the Hess Apparel.
Mr. Lewis, yes.
Yeah, wonderful people. Anyway, they'd gotten my name through the A.L. Fleming, and asked me if I would be interested. Well, of course, at first I said, no, I can't do that. I'm University of Delaware and also consulting in Washington. But they persisted, and frankly, I was getting a little tired of the big city life.
Right.
And so I did agree to come down for an interview, and back then you were lucky to get a flight in and out here every 3 or 4 days, but I got here, and they had in the old, it was still half Comico Hotel and half One Plaza East.
Right.
So in one of their little conference rooms, they had a nice lunch, and Avery Hall was there, and Frank Perdue was there, and Lewis Hass and Jack Webb, and I can't remember. There were 8 or 10 of them, and coincidentally, and I had no knowledge of this, but either at that same time or about the same time, they arranged for my wife to come down and gave her she was still living in Newark, even though I was back and forth.
Right.
Anyway, she came down, and Buddy Hanna,
Right.
that's Frank's and
Right.
yeah, their father, showed her the town, and so anyway, we went back and forth, and I said, well, I just can't do that. And then I said, well, if I could teach a couple courses here, make up on the closer to salary-wise. So they agreed, and I met with Wilbur Devin, who was the president then. And so for quite a few years, I taught an 8 o'clock and a 9 o'clock.
I didn't know that. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, money and banking and the principles of economics and all of the economic basics. And so I did that interview and agreed to come here. And the committee was much smaller then. And as I've told the story several times, I came to town on September 15, 1967. You know, when I was at the University of Delaware, I thought that the Earth ended at the Delaware boundary. So I would come down to the Delaware Del Mar, and I didn't even know Salisbury was a nice city, just
Right.
5 or 10 miles more. Anyway, so I came, and as I have said before, there was no office, no furniture, no money in the bank, no nothing, except there were wonderful, great people behind all this. So I first went to Lou Hess at Hess Apparel. He said, "We'll go over to the hotel." He said, "There's some space on the 5th and the I forget the other floor. Anyway, said those floors are already being converted to office space." So I went over and looked at this space, and there was a guy standing in there in his shirt sleeves and baggy pants, and I was friendly. I said, "Hi, are you the janitor?" And he said, "No, I'm Bill Morgan." I said, "Oh, hi, Mr. Morgan." He said, "I own this place." So
One of the most prominent people in Salisbury.
and a wonderful man.
Yeah.
And so, and we got along famously right up till he died. And of course, his grandson Morgan is a chip off the old block.
Right.
And so was his son-in-law Dick. They are wonderful people. I'm still, I love Morgan and his whole family. Anyway, so the way we got it started, and the way the people here got this idea, basically, Jack Webb was, we call it the big board. He was on the First National Bank board in Baltimore. And I think maybe Dale Adkins had some, anyway, 2 or 3 of the prominent citizens here had big connections in Baltimore, so they knew about the Greater Baltimore Committee. And they liked that idea. And of course, this community, Salisbury, has always had terrific leadership.
Right.
There was probably a de facto Greater Salisbury Committee back when this was a colony. I don't know.
Right.
But anyway, there is terrific leadership here. And so it was much smaller than that. I think we started out with about 25 active members, and it was a totally different. In the recent days, it's gotten much bigger and broader. Scope has changed somewhat, but the original idea was that from these CEOs, and you had to be the CEO of your company,
Right.
and to be a member. And the concept was, we want to make good stuff happen, stay in the background, and let the political bodies take the credit. And they were quite insistent. So we had a very low key, very low profile for my years there, and by deliberate. Although naturally we got some, you can't do all this without.
Right.
So anyway, the first meeting. Oh gosh, talk about. There's some humor in all this, I'll tell you. I did move into One Plaza East, and I didn't have any furniture, so I borrowed some tables from the hotel and some chairs and set up a conference room. Probably the first or second meeting, had a meeting of the committee or the executive committee. Anyway, Frank Perdue was there, and we were using these rickety old chairs from the hotel, and we were sitting around the table. And Frank sat down and his chair collapsed and he went flat on his, how embarrassing. So Frank said in his usual way, he said, "If you don't get some decent furniture, I'm not coming back." Anyway, Frank was a long-term member and just great people. Of course, Frank Morse came along somewhat later, and Bill Bateman was the president of what was then Symington Way, later became Dresser. So Bill was in the background. I didn't see much of him, but he was the chairman. They contributed a large sum of money. He was really a spark plug. So anyway, we moved on, and then Bill Morgan was the second chair. And after him, Dresser had taken over Symington Wade, and their president, great guy by the name of Dan Bird, who was here for quite a few years. And then he moved up in the Dresser organization. And he was the chairman then. And during that period when he was chairman, Salisbury State Teachers College was in some trouble because it was according to some study that Governor Marvin Mendel had done, was being underutilized, and they were talking about closing
It was
it.
almost closed. Yeah.
Almost. It almost did. Anyway, Dan was a very powerful guy, and I'm pretty aggressive. Anyway, so we first through the senator, then you may remember Senator Mary Knock, we got to meet with the governor, and we persuaded him, yes. He said, well, you got to make, if we're going to do anything and change the decision, you've got to make sure it grows. And then somebody else said, yeah, but you need a community college too. Well, you can't. So anyway, that's how we got involved in higher education.
Right.
Anyway, when I first came, they said, well, 3 months, come up with some kind of a plan for what we should be doing in 3 months. That's fine, and we met a lot. Great guys. I just love those guys. Anyway, we met, and eventually, out of a lot of ideas, including a regional airport out near Vienna and all, which never materialized.
Right.
But anyway, we did boil it down to two things. One, we really needed an office building, and city and county, of course, the county was in the old courthouse, and the
Right.
city was in the old fire station. So we advocated for that, and we actually set up a system where we would finance it and rent it to them. But about that time, the county came in and said, well, listen, we shouldn't be having private citizens. So the county undertook it, and so the government plaza was.
Yeah, the government office building. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the office building, and that was one of our second effort. My background is all economic development from when I was doing my doctoral work in Tennessee. And even in Korea, I worked on economic development. So anyway, I was pushing to have an economic development organization here because, I was experienced in that, and I could see that
Right.
I believe there was a big need. So
And at that point, Dresser was always like year to year, and then the boat plant, the Chris Craft plant, was in jeopardy all the time.
that's right.
Right.
And shortly after that, Chris Craft was gone.
Yeah.
And then some years later, of course, Dresser's been gone a long time now. Actually, there's been and Campbell Soup employed 1,000 people.
Right.
I was just looking at it not too long ago, and there's been almost 100% turnover of manufacturing industry in this town. And of course, Frank Perdue was just coming online as a
Right.
as a
He wasn't
plant
quite Frank Perdue yet in 1967. He was about to bust loose though.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, that's the story. He hadn't started the vertically integrated plants
Right.
yet. As a matter of fact, it happened the same year that Greater Salisbury started.
Right.
He bought the plant
They
downtown.
bought the Swift plant downtown.
He bought the
Yeah.
old Swift plant. That's right. And I remember in the meetings, and they were pretty jocular meetings sometimes. And I remember some of his peers, some of our members say, "What the? Are you buying that old thing for, Frank? You're crazy." And I do remember that at that time, Frank's the Purdue Industries, their gross income was $10 million.
Right.
And I think you could add a bunch more zeros to that 10 now.
It's about
so.
$3 billion now. Yeah.
Well, more than that, I think, but
Yeah.
it's in the billions.
Yeah.
Anyway, so both happened. We got this economic development group started, which is now called SWED, Salisbury Wacomico Economic Development, and we got, and then just progressed from there, and then things we got into this business about colleges, and Frank, I was a big advocate for community colleges. I still believe in this workforce development big time. I really think it's urgent that we have that 2-year skill level above high school, but not necessarily a bachelor's degree. There's a huge need for that in the country and in the community. So anyway, Frank Morse was a member then. He had been the mayor, and he had gotten some experience with community colleges. And I had, while I was at the University of Delaware, the governor then, a gentleman by the name of Charlie Terry, wonderful guy. For some reason, on several commissions that he had as a still a member, still at University of Delaware, but he pulled me in for these cost review commissions, and one of the things he pulled me in was to, along with a guy by the name of Otis Jefferson from Sussex County, he pulled us in to do a plan for a community college. So I was already into this sort of thing. So Frank and I, well, we of course took it, everything we did, you'd make a proposal to the whole committee, and
Right.
they would approve it, say yay or nay, and community college was very high on the list, along with all education. Jack Webb was a very big advocate for public education, and so we
So you guys would get the idea, and you'd sort of formulate it and then take it to the politicians to kind of implement.
well, yeah, but let's take Warwick, for example. That was a real battle. I mean, they, for some reason, this area was just, the governments in this area, especially Wacomico County, were just didn't see the point in
They had
it.
no vision for it.
Yeah, didn't see the point in it, and superintendent of schools at that time was totally against it.
Roy Mahaffey. Yeah, and I've read about that. He thought it was silly.
Yeah,
He'd rather, if they're
exactly.
going to spend money, give it to the school system. Was his
Oh,
idea.
big
Yeah.
time, yeah. He said, we don't need that. We have adult education. Well, that's a totally different deal.
Right.
Anyway, I think Frank and I, we developed this, well, we got the senator, at that time, Senator Mary Knock, she was a big education advocate in Maryland anyway. So Frank and I made, God bless him, he's a wonderful man. What a hero, what a great guy. Anyway, Frank and I made these presentations all over the four-county area to the governments, to the Rotary clubs, to anybody that would listen to us. And Worcester County, they came, the commissioners there were much stronger than our guys.
Right.
They actually came over here and said to our county council members, get moving, guys, this is a good idea.
Yeah.
So anyway, what wound up was that Dorchester, they went ahead, but they decided they wanted to affiliate with Chesapeake. I guess that's a regional
Right.
connection thing. So we wound up with Warwick, Worcester, and Wacomico counties. Somerset County was supposed to be a part of it, but for them to buy in, it was $25,000 to be a part of it at that time, and they couldn't afford it. So anyway, we started it and named it Warwick, obviously.
You hired Dr. Boehner.
And we hired Arnold Bader, God rest his soul. He's still alive,
Yes.
but he's not well at all.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, we did that, and we opened. Our county council said that. Well, they finally said, well, we don't want any more bricks and mortars, but if you can run a community college without any new buildings, we'll go ahead. So that's the way we started. We rented stuff all over town.
Yeah, you had them in little shopping center offices in the basement of the Asbury Church. I mean, there were classes everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere. Well, yeah, we used the classroom, all the Sunday school classrooms at Asbury for a while. Everywhere. Downtown, we had the criminal justice thing in the building.
That's perseverance to get through that.
Yeah, Arnold's our first play, and Arnold, God bless, he said, enough of these studies, I'm going to start the college. So he came down here with a grant from the state to study it again, but actually, and then we confirmed him as the president. His first office was in what is the mall that is now gone. We had one office there, and he started with one class.
Right.
And his first employee, his first secretary, was Mary Ann Dunn, who's
Right.
Mike Dunn's
Mike's mom.
Wonderful lady.
Yeah.
So anyway, and then we just moved on from there. And for quite a few years, we just had classes all over the place, including in Worcester County, and finally got to the point where the county council, we were spending more on rent than it would cost.
Right.
So we acquired the campus land where that beautiful college is now, and that's one of our great stories, I think. I mean, and I can't begin to imagine how much good that community college has done for the people.
It is a testament to your all's work.
Yeah.
And around that time, too, was when Mr. Henson came to town, and he made a big difference. Tell me about Mr. Henson.
And
I know he was your best friend.
He was my best. We were very close friends, and he said, to me at one time. He said, "Bob, the only reason I came here was because of you." And then I think he meant Greater Salisbury Community,
Right.
but because he was big, big, great guy. What a wonderful addition to the community. Yes, he was. We did a lot of good stuff together.
And he was in Hagerstown. He wanted some stuff out of Hagerstown. They said, we're not going to do it. Came down here. We did it for him. You did it for him.
Yeah, right. Oh, Hagerstown. I'll never forget when he moved. First, he moved. He started flying in here, Hagerstown to Baltimore, and then down here. And then shortly thereafter, he moved his operating headquarters down here. Then a year or two later, he personally moved down here. And all during this movement, I wish I had a copy. He bought a full page ad in the Hagerstown paper. This is Dick Henson, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
And he said, "These are the reasons that I left here."
Oh.
And it was a full page. Oh, what a guy. Anyway, he was happy here, and
And then after they left, they modernized the airport to try to get him back. But
Yeah.
it ended up being a benefit to the community, what they did.
Right, yeah. Well, they still have a boulevard up there named Henson Boulevard
Right.
and the Little Henson Museum. Of course, here he left lasting. He gave millions, as you know, to both universities, Warwick, the hospital, and the first gift was to the Boy Scouts because
Right.
he believed and his foundation still the character building and education of youth. That's what he really interested
The Scout camp.
in.
And
Oh yeah, that was
yeah.
the first gift, $1 million
Yeah.
to the Boy Scouts. I may have had a little something to do with that since I've been a Boy Scout.
You're a huge advocate for the Boy Scouts, yes.
Since been a Boy Scout since 1938, still am.
Wow.
I was an Eagle Scout in 1943, and I took off my Boy Scout uniform and put on that other uniform within months. So anyway, we did many things. Then the water we were having nobody paid any attention to the importance
river.
of the river. Nobody paid. So all of a sudden, and I think they had a guy they called the dock master, but I don't know. Anyway, there was very little. No, people just weren't conscious of the importance of the river.
The commerce on that river is incredible.
Oh, we've done an economic study. Well, anyway, the way that all came about was in '73, I think it was, one of the barges grounded right here in town.
Right.
And it wasn't a terrible oil leak, but it was an oil leak of significance. And so the Coast Guard captain for the Bay out of Port of Baltimore, but it included the whole Chesapeake. Anyway, he imposed a penalty, took the license away from the captain of that barge. Well, that stirred it up. Then all the captains said, "We're not going up that river. It's just a hazard." So they boycotted. And my God, you can't imagine. I always use the expression, "We freeze to death in the dark with empty gas tanks," and we didn't have that river traffic. So anyway, there was a big faulty roll there, and then the captain of the port called a meeting in Baltimore. Tom Powers, Captain Power, I think was his name. Anyway, there were lawyers and shippers. There were a couple hundred people in this custom house meeting, and they said, "We got to do something." And what came out of that was they said, "Well, we need an organization to coordinate this." And somebody mentioned my name and said, "Well, you got this thing in the Salisbury." So they asked me right then. I got Greater Salisbury. So we formed the Delmarva Water Transport Committee, which has been very effective over the years because we were able to coordinate the Corps of Engineers.
Yes, it's complicated.
Local government. Yeah, it's complicated. A lot of players in there.
Right, where the spoil goes, you guys found those sites, worked with the county. Yeah.
It's very.
You have to prove the need to the federal government every time, get it in the legislation.
Yeah. It is a federally authorized depth.
Right.
And of course, the Corps of Engineers is responsible for the dredging under the law, but where the material goes, that's the local government. And boy, the rules and regulations and environmental rules make it very tough. But over the years, it's worked, and we've developed for years and years, I actively supervised the executive director. We had an executive director, but I sort of oversaw it because I had the military connections and all that. But now Tim Emge, I've been out of the Tim as a vice president at Cato. He's sort of in that role now. And we still have an executive director, Becky Robinson, and that's still a very important. So those are just a couple of the examples. Some that we don't get mentioned. The Holly Center is here instead
Yes.
of Cambridge, but that's something that we.
Right.
But that's truth. And,
At the time, that was a huge deal.
oh yeah, big deal.
Now, the government sort of changed the way they manage that stuff, but it was a great boon for our community to have that.
Oh, it was, and it's unfortunate that the way the legislation has changed that way they handle
Yeah.
these people, because they really do need an institution like that. Well, Greg, you got me started and I can't stop. So now it's up to you to tell me, ask questions or shut me off or whatever.
No, you were the ones who identified that the need was there and helped get the money, helped make the vision a reality, and it just fascinates me.
Well, yeah, our mission statement, and it's changed a little bit since Mike's been the president, but our mission statement back was to identify the major problems of the community, to come up with sound solutions to those problems, and work with others to accomplish them. So yes, we identified the problems, and no, we didn't. I don't remember what we did the city park. We certainly helped the zoo a lot.
Right? Yeah, the zoo. Yeah.
Yeah. But the Riverwalk Park, that was another project.
You guys got the money for that.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
We paid for the study. I remember Dave Stein was the guy. The way I would work with this organization was that, of course, the whole committee, and we got along great. I just can't tell you how much I love those guys. But anyway, the way I typically work it is that one person would have that, like Frank Morris already had a particular interest in community colleges, so he and I teamed up.
Right.
So I would team up with somebody on the committee who would be the committee member, and I would be the professional that would work right. That's the way that one. Dave Stein, Urban River came up as that was kind of an outspring of the dredging, but anyway, Dave Stein, I don't remember exactly why, but he became the member of Greater Salisbury to work with that, and we worked with Pete Cooper, and
Right.
as a result, that really nice Riverwalk has developed over the years, and that's really pretty nice, I think.
And it was a great bunch. We talk about Mr. Lewis Hess and those people. They were guys who had vision.
Oh, yeah.
And the towns around us just never had personalities like that, I don't think.
Well, I can't speak for the other towns, but I can tell you, we had lots of vision and lots of. And incidentally,
And you herded all these big egos together to get them to do stuff. I mean, Avery Hall.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned Buddy Hanna. Did anyone ever tell Buddy Hanna what to do?
No,
Or
no.
Milford Twilley or those guys? They did whatever they wanted. J. Roland DeShiel, they did whatever they wanted to do.
Oh yeah, but Woody was one of our great members.
Yeah.
And John, so you're right, but I should mention that we did have this connection with Baltimore, and the Greater Baltimore Committee, that was in their heyday years.
Right.
But a guy by the name of Bill Boucher, you may know the name.
I do.
Anyway, he was the head of the Greater Baltimore Committee, and he was so helpful. He'd come down here a couple times a year. He'd evaluate and make speeches to the committee and so on. So it was just, you know, I was on a fast track in the Army, and I probably would have gone a lot farther, because I was on my way to becoming an executive officer to a 3-star general, and I had a couple other 3- and 4-star generals that I'd worked for. But anyway, it turned out that I retired and came here, and God's will. I mean,
Well, we're so lucky that you were here.
well, I'm lucky that I was here. I'm still having a great time, Greg. Meetings yesterday, meetings tomorrow, this meeting today. I enjoyed being a part of this wonderful community.
He's Colonel Bob Cook, and if there's anyone who's done more for this community, I don't know who it is. I really don't. Colonel, thanks for being here today.
My pleasure. I talked too much, but it was, don't wind me up, Greg.
It was terrific. Just to have you here at 91 is just a thrill.
Thank you.
I'm Greg Bassett from the Salisbury Independent Newspaper, another edition of One-on-One right here on PAC 14.
First Shore Federal is proud to support PAC 14 and one-on-one. We'd encourage every business to support PAC 14 and pick a program and support it, and let's make a difference.